Good morning, lovely people of Earth. How are you? That's what Yoko Ono used to say. And I find myself saying it to people too. I feel like an alien. People of Earth, how are you? Hello. Very nice to see you. I did not kill John Lennon. I did not send him out onto the street to be murdered by that man. No, wasn't me, Mark David Chapman. I don't know him. Nowhere I know him. I was just sitting quietly in my little apartment in that building, in your famous building, Dakota Building in New York, and I'm just busy listening to all the song I write with John Lennon. And then suddenly I hear the boom, boom, boom in the street. I go to the window and I go, oh no, it must be Mark David Chapman again. No, that's the way. That's the way I. In my head, like there's an alternate history happening all the time, and it's all just completely made up bullshit. Which is why I should never write a history book, because I'd add my own bullshit to it. I'm telling you. We've got Bulelo Tinta, we've got Pumi Mashiho, you've got me. What did you do to deserve this? You must have done something terrible in your previous life, but here we are.
Indeed.
Here we are. Good morning.
So, stuff to do, people to see, places to go, things to talk about this morning. Among other things, we will have the burning platform, which I know is everybody's favorite thing on a Thursday. And today should be no different. We've got a hell of a lineup. So we've got Kanthan making a star appearance because he doesn't have to do the school run for a change.
Because it's holidays. Is it because it's school holidays yet?
I think he's off this week and next week with child minding duties. And so we can congratulate him almost a month later on his birthday, but we can also check in with Kanthan. And then this morning, we're going to have Rob Hersov on, who's been making waves. I don't think it was in his intention to make waves. He was speaking at a BizNews conference as a businessman and investor in South Africa, one of the few people who's actually putting money into infrastructure in the private sphere. You know, he's building an airport in Cape Town, and he's just launched the Cape Town Stock Exchange, or the Cape Stock Exchange. And he really cares enormously about South Africa, but he got himself into some hot water, as you do. And Pumi and I know this better than anyone. You open your mouth and you say things about politics that are not the mainstream views, and people come down on you like a ton of bricks. And poor old Rob Hersov found himself in the hot water, but he's happy to come on and talk to us this morning, even though he's still getting heat from a number of different quarters. And you get threatened in business because business people, by and large, are quite timid, and they are careful to toe the line, especially in corporate South Africa, because they know that government carries a big stick, and they can find themselves in some very difficult and dangerous, murky waters if they criticize government, if they criticize particular ministers. And I think it's brave of Rob to have done what he did, and we'll talk to him later. But we also want to talk to him about what's going on in the news this week, about some of the new developments in politics. And, here on this show, as Pumi will tell you, we don't have any sacred cows. We're happy for people to come on and express their views. In fact, we're hoping more places will start doing this so that it isn't just our responsibility, or, the odd BizNews conference's responsibility to speak the truth about what's going on in South Africa. We've got an election coming up it's just 1 day over. 31 days, 1 day over a month,
days.
And we will be there. 51? November, yes, November the 1st. Sorry. 31. That's, Jesus, my calendar's all over the place. I said, thank you, Pums. I said to Mbulelo this morning, when I came online, I said to him, this is my absolute favorite time of the year. I keep saying it. I just love it. My mom always has made Christmas so special. So the downhill ride to Christmas through October and November is like I'm on a go-kart and I'm just going at full speed, and it's just an open road. I love it. Makes me so happy. So it does go too fast.
Especially when you wake up on a morning like today, right?
Oh, isn't it great?
Little drizzly outside. Finally, all that hay fever, all the dust in the air. It's got, oof.
So you guys do the show with me every Thursday, and Bulelo does it for his pains every other day. And you know how I sneeze and carry on, and I've got the tissues here next to me. That's usually for July, August, and a little bit of September. I don't need the tissues touching wood, but now the hay fever goes, everything's green. The birds are chirping at 5 in the morning. It's light.
A little
It's
earlier than that. It's a little bit
yeah,
earlier than that.
it's so nice. Anyway, we did get some rain last night, which was very good in Gauteng, and we needed it badly. And just in case that isn't enough good news for you, if you are one of those people, and I have every reason to believe that lots and lots of our listeners here on cliffcentral.com are into cryptocurrency, just to top it off, Bitcoin's back up to $43,600 after a bumpy week where China banned cryptocurrency. So there's another reason to smile. All right, a few things we need to get into. Bulelo's a bit annoyed that he's seeing Christmas stuff in the shops already. I saw something on Tuesday. You know those hampers that people buy and then they distribute to people that they want to help or whatever it is. It's got like a Christmas sticker on it, and it's all those essentials and things. I saw one of those in my local shop, or a couple of those in my local shop the other day, but I haven't seen decorations or heard the music or anything. I think that starts now, October, next couple of weeks.
I saw like a Father Christmas packaging, like these little things with Father Christmas stuff. Like walking in, like, come on, guys, come on. Because generally that means guys are taking time off at work and whatever. So we still got 3 months left in the year.
Yeah.
Yep. We can't now be already oaks are smashing beers at 12 in the afternoon. They say December is 31 Saturdays. Just
yeah. I've decided to go on a bit of a detox for the next 3 weeks, just purely as an experiment to see how much weight I can lose. A, and B, I'm eating very carefully along with the detox, so no alcohol and other bad influences like staying up late or any of that stuff. I just want to do a purely scientific experiment for 3 weeks and see how many kilograms drop off of me while I'm doing this.
So what's your control? What are the things that you're dropping off besides the alcohol?
Okay, so this is pretty simple. A friend of mine is doing it as well, and he and I had a conversation on Tuesday, and he's like, well, this is what he's doing, and he's already he was never fat, but he's kind of getting into shape super fast. He's dropping carbs, so there are none of those in the diet. Normally in the mornings I have a little espresso with some foam. It's like almost like a little Americano almost, or something like that. I can't remember what the term is for it, but I had a plain black coffee this morning, so no milk. I'm cutting out milk. I'm cutting out sugar in every kind of variety. So no snacks, no sugars, no carbohydrates, or as few as I can possibly manage. And no fruit, because I don't want any of that fructose either. So I'm doing protein. It's kind of a keto thing, I suppose. And I'm exercising every day, and I'm cutting out the drinking for 3 weeks. So those are my controls.
And why are you doing it?
Just want to see if it creates enough of a dramatic result, because I'm the kind of person who is, I'm only made enthusiastic about things. I'm only motivated when I see results. I don't get motivated by the idea of picking a goal off a list or any of that stuff. So if I look in the mirror in 3 weeks' time and I can see even just a noticeable difference, which I know I will, in 3 weeks of doing this, you definitely will, right? Then it'll spur me on to bring more controls in. And then I'll get to a point where eventually I'm on a proper road of self-improvement. And I haven't really stopped exercising the whole way through lockdown. I've been very disciplined about that. But it's the eating that I needed to take control of. The eating and the drinking. And I'm now going to implement those two.
That was the main event of the lockdown.
What?
Eating and drinking was the main event of the lockdown.
Well,
watching TV, just walk past the fridge,
yeah.
sitting at your desk, walk past the fridge.
But I haven't.
Dare I suggest you? Well, why don't you just do that for the rest of your life? Like, just stop drinking and eating crap food for the rest of your life.
I'm kind of hoping that it you see, Bulelo, if I see a huge improvement, even if I see a noticeable improvement, I'll do that for the rest of my life. It's very easy for me to implement those kinds of things. I've done it 100 times. If I want to learn something, I learn it like a motherfucker. But if I don't want to learn something, you can take the horse to water and you can't make me drink. I will just stare blankly at you for hours and not take any interest. But if I want something, if something really appeals to me, there's nothing that can stop me then. And I know it's like a train that's just going at full steam ahead. So I'm hoping to get there. Let's see. I'll report back in 3 weeks and let you know.
We'll report back to you in 3 weeks because we can see you.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'll do the show with no clothes on, and we'll be able to tell that. I just won't do I promise I will not do a Richard Spoor on you. That I won't do.
Although having said that, a lady has told me that if you are in like super shape, it does give that a little more sort of the aesthetic of extra length. So maybe you may need to use that as a control. Yeah.
I'm
just we're in the brainstorming phase. Let's not. There's no bad ideas in brainstorming.
I will.
So Martel Mhlanga says, I'm joining you, Gareth. It's October, no alcohol and sugar for the whole month. Yeah, that's kind of the plan.
I just want you all to know there's a chocolate in my fridge waiting for this show to end.
You're allowed, Pums. You can do what you. I'm not one of those people who tries to make other people do what I'm doing. You go ahead. 16 to 8 intermittent fasting works. Yeah, that's another thing I'm doing.
What is that? What is that? What does that mean? 16 to 8. What does that mean?
I'm not sure. I think they mean hours. 16 to 8 hours of intermittent fasting. But what I'm doing now is I eat my last meal at night, supper time, and then I only have another meal at lunchtime the next day. And I don't get hungry in between. I'll just have water or coffee, and not a lot of coffee. And then at lunchtime, I'm ready to have the next meal. But I'm, again, sticking to those rules I mentioned earlier. It's kind of boring, but I thought I'd bring it up anyway because now I'm doing it.
But sorry, I was gonna let it go, but I still don't understand why you're doing it. Like, do you want to enjoy your life more? Do you want to look better? I'm not too sure. Is it what is it for the aesthetic?
No, all of the above. I mean, first of all, I've always been very rude about fat people, so I cannot allow myself to get fat because they will climb into me and I'll deserve it. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Purely the motivation of fear. The second one is I want to look better.
Fear's a good motivation.
It's a good motivator, right? The second one is I want to look better because I'm superficial as fuck. And if I'm going to be superficial about other people, then they can be superficial about me. And I'm not getting any younger. If I don't do it now, it's never going to happen. The third reason is because I like the feeling of not being heavy and not being fat and not being lumbering and not being slow. I've never been massively overweight, but I could definitely do with some improvement. And I would like the idea of feeling lighter and feeling fitter and feeling better. And I know how that feels because I've been there before. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. And then, of course, I could set a trend for myself. I could set a new normal. We've used that term a lot in the last while. But I could set a new normal that I quite like the feeling of and then stick to that for the rest of my life. So let's go. Let's go.
And when will you be taking some suggestions? Because I might suggest we do a little longer than a month. Got to set out your goals a little longer than that to have real differences.
But as I said to you, if I don't see a noticeable result, I'm not going to be motivated to carry on. So I'll report back in 3 weeks. I'll say to you in 3 weeks, listen, I see an improvement. I feel an improvement. Let's keep moving. And then I can take advice from you on cardio or on eating plans or on other kinds of exercise and activity that I might take an interest.
Mindset. It's all mindset. It's not about diet. Mindset. Okay. That's all that matters. Mindset.
Carl says, Gareth, if you get any fatter, the fat people eat you. They love their fat foods. Yeah, that's great.
Oh my God.
So this is interesting. So Kampamba says, we're doing October and Movember in the office, and each person donates $50. At the end, the company matches what we collect, and we donate it to cancer. Well, that's fantastic. I mean, again, it's nice to be around people who inspire you. Gareth, don't follow Mbulelo. You'll end up having no life. Yeah, I know. I'm very careful. I'm careful to walk that tightrope. I don't want to become like Mbulelo.
No.
Guys, there's a lot to cover this morning, and I don't want to mess around with boring stuff about what I'm doing, because Angela Merkel had a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and Pumi saw this picture, and she has a lot to say about it. So let me show you the picture. All right, here's the picture of what Pumi's talking about. So there's Angela sitting on the left-hand side, and there's Vladimir Putin, who's leaning back in his chair, and his big black dog
with the smug look on his face. Look at that. Like,
yeah, he's got a real like, oh, I'm such a manipulator look on his face, and she is looking a little bit nervous. And there's this big black dog that's walking in front of them with a collar on. I think it's looks like a Labrador, but I can't be sure.
It's a Labrador.
Okay, but Labradors are well known for being very nice, friendly dogs. They're seldom aggressive, but because it's completely black in color, it's wearing this collar, and it's slinking past like it's in charge. It makes me think it's a bit of a setup, because Pumi told me something I didn't know about Angela Merkel.
So Angela is, as you all know, there's been election season all over the world, the elections, and she is, after 16 years, stepping down. So she's obviously also talking about all the times within her chancellorship, the things that have happened, the things that stick out, the things that are in her memory. So that happened quite a while ago. She has an absolute phobia for dogs. And young Vladimir knows this, and they had a meeting. It was, I don't remember what it is that they had to come negotiate about. And this guy, that is the day he decides he's bringing his 2 dogs to the office. On the day that I'm having this, meeting with the German chancellor who has a phobia for dogs. And, the thing, and she was talking about it over the weekend. And I was thinking to myself, when Barack Obama left office, he also said, he was just like, that Vladimir Putin, that guy's a jackass. And I thought, well, that's, America, Russia. But seeing that, I was just like, and Angela's response was that, she just thinks that Vladimir has, issues of needing to kind of perk up his manhood. That's why he did that. I was just like, this guy is an absolute asshole.
Well, he's also, he's a Bond villain. So if he knows you're afraid of sharks, he's going to have his meeting with you at the aquarium. And if anything he can do to get the upper hand, and that's how power politicians play. He's not messing around. He will take whatever advantage he can. I mean,
I know. So the Olympics team, the Russian Olympics team, getting ready to go to the Olympics. He is I think jiu-jitsu or something.
Yep.
Comes up, arrives in his suit to come like for a training session with the guys. I'm just like, this guy.
He knows how to play.
He's doing
it. He plays the game. He's 100% old school about it, but he knows what messaging works. I mean, this is classic posturing. Classic. The guy is very good at taking advantage of everyone else's weaknesses. Don't think you're going to let if he finds out you're afraid of something, he will use it to his advantage.
And I mean, he doesn't make a secret of the fact that he actually spies on all these other leaders, and so he has files on everybody. He knows what they, so that he can use it to his advantage. Look at Tracy's Tracy birthday. That's exactly it, right? So you just see him, look at his body language, his smirk, it's like...
Tracy says a body language expert would have had a field day with this picture. Look at her tight lips, Vlad's open torso, and yet he is fig-leafing. So much going on there. Yeah. It's an interesting picture. If you Google Angela Merkel dog, that's the first picture that comes up.
But Putin's no worse than most people in the northern suburbs who own dogs. Like, there's this thing now where we also pay to go to nice restaurants. Please don't bring your dog. Like, why do people think they can bring their dog to restaurants and stuff? Like, people with kids and dogs and Vladimir Putin are the most self-centered people in the whole world. It's unbelievable.
Well, I agree with you on pets at restaurants. I don't like that. I also don't see the point of people going shopping with their pets. It's totally unnecessary. And your pet will survive if you just leave them at home for like 10 minutes. They're not going to die, Fact is, a lot of people are obsessed, and some people don't have anyone else in their life but their pets. And I'm not making excuses for them. But Vladimir Putin, all he's got in his life is power. And all he cares about in his life is power. So that's why he will take advantage of every opportunity to make you feel weak and small and pathetic. And it does give you an advantage. I mean, you remember the Frost-Nixon interview, right? Where Nixon drew attention to Frost's shoes because Frost was wearing a pair of loafers with little tassels on them. And Nixon, who was you can call him whatever you want, but he was a real man. He was a weaselly man, but he was a man. Macho man, like a straight up alpha male who, again, politically, Nixon would do whatever it took, even sending people into the Watergate building to see what his enemy was up to. And he sat there and he looked at Frost and he said, "Hello, Mr. Frost." Frost said, "Hello, Mr. President." And he said, "Those are very effeminate shoes you have on." And what it did is it completely destabilized David Frost for the first 10 minutes of the interview. And all those hard questions that he was going to ask with a specific attitude, he had to move off of. He had to change his tack because he was completely thrown by what Nixon had said. And this is what you do. This is how you take it. I mean, Prince Philip was famous at doing this. No one ever got to interview Prince Philip without him asserting himself right at the start of the interview, or dismissing questions he thought were stupid, or straight up insulting people if he thought that they made no sense. This is what you do.
Yeah, but you know what? It also got me thinking about this kind of, as she's thinking back on her career, is it also got me thinking about those assholes at the workplace. Like this is like a visual representation of those people that you work with that are just like, what's wrong with this guy? That's
Right.
what this is. And how do you deal with that shit, right? How do you do? I mean, I'm lucky. I get to work with people I like most of the time. People like you guys, people, and we get to pick, right? We get to pick the people that we work with as clients and as suppliers and all of that. But not everybody gets to do that. And how do you deal with that nonsense?
Having said that, Putin is actually one of the people I would probably I kind of like in politics, because the rest of them are up to the same thing, right? Like, let's be clear, geopolitics is about power. It's not about anything else. It is about asserting your power. What he's doing is, I'm not going to apologize for it. Whereas, in the Americans and the Brits, they kind of try and dress it up in nice suits and, hello, how are you? And whereas Putin's going, no. It's the Russia show here. And now we know, especially now, all the natural gases, I believe it's about 80% of Europe. That's through us. Gazprom does that. You want some, you come to me. You don't, sleep in the dark. And we're clear about it. I kind of like Putin for that. I'm not saying I like what he does, how he conducts himself, but he's one of my favorite politicians for that.
Yeah, and one of the reasons you'd really like him is if you were Russian, because you would know to have that guy on your side is better than to have some flimsy, flopsy, Boris Johnson-y, bumbling, stumbling, trying to be polite.
Yeah, well, they're gonna have him until he dies.
and you know what? Most Russians, ironically, are okay with that. Which is, for those of us who believe in limited term of government, we believe in democracy. For us, that bothers us, but it doesn't bother the average Russian. Trust me, they've come out of a lot worse. I mean, many of them can still remember Stalin and Brezhnev and Khrushchev and people like that. Gorbachev.
And oh yes, even those late years of young Gorbachev.
And remember Boris Yeltsin not so long ago. I mean, he was the one before the lad. And Boris Yeltsin was always drunk, and they still loved him.
Hammered. the Thabo Mbeki of that region, yeah.
Correct. Thabo Mbeki. All right, so a couple of things I want to show you. First of all, this is probably the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen on television, and someone forwarded me the clip. Now, I'm not, and you know this, I'm not pro or anti-vaccine. I think that the vaccines, if anything, are a miraculous thing that we should celebrate, because if it gets us back to normal and people are able to resume their lives, then it is a very good thing that I'm entirely in favor of. The problem I have is the propaganda around it. And I don't like the fact when government's trying to sell you something hard, I'm always suspicious, even if it's a perfectly good thing. And in this case, I don't believe that vaccines are evil, because there are many countries in the world who we know would not do their citizens damage. Countries like Israel that have been through all kinds of things. The last thing they're going to do is try and hurt their own people. But when I see an idiot like Stephen Colbert, and I never thought he was an idiot before, but I think more and more when I see clips of what he does on his show, it just starts to worry me that all these guys have lost their purpose. Whether it's Kimmel, or whether it's the other Jimmy, or whether it's the fat James Corden, or whether it's this Stephen Colbert, they all seem to be singing from the same hymn sheet, which really bothers me. And a lot of it isn't even funny. I just want you to see this clip quickly of. Sorry, I think you lost me for a second there. You hear me now?
Yeah.
So I want you to see this clip of Stephen Colbert and like a whole bunch of dancers in stupid like outfits dressed as needles. Vaccination. Have you seen this?
As needles.
It's so bad. So this is
I'm ready for it.
Now tell me, A, if you think this is funny, because if you think it's funny, and Stephen Colbert is supposedly the smart late night guy, right? He's the one who appeals to smarter people. So if it's funny, you can give it 1 thumbs up. If you think it sends a message that needs to be sent, put 2 thumbs up. And if you love Stephen Colbert more after this, put 3 thumbs up, because for me, it's all 3 down. Take a look. I can't watch more of it than that. So they've got 4 dancers dancing with him.
What is actually going on there?
I don't know, but they've got like an animated injection needle dancing around on the screen too, and it says vaccine as in VAX and then the word scene underneath. And I don't know what the point of this is other than to like be political about the vaccine and to say that having the vaccine makes you a good person. Do you know, it just drives me crazy, because if that video was the only thing I saw, I would never get the vaccine. It has the opposite effect on me that Stephen Colbert is, I think, trying to achieve here. Tell me what you think.
Oh, I think it's not a Stephen Colbert thing. It's like blaming the police in South Africa for doing a terrible job. He's just a puppet. There's a big machine around him that's driven by money. Those are the people you got to say, because he who pays the piper plays the tune. Gareth, I don't want to get.
You think this is Big Pharma, and they say to him, do a segment where you are making people think about the vaccine in a positive way? Because it's certainly not funny.
Well, I mean, I'd have to know who pays for advertising on, where's he, CNBC or whatever. That's who forces that message on. Like, Colbert doesn't have the power. He gets told what to do. As much as we want to think he's this big, powerful man, he's not. They will move on from him. So, I don't like it. I don't watch any of that stuff.
No,
I wish I could have heard his monologue before they did that.
Yeah, it's bad, eh? That is
I
so
wish
bad.
I could have heard that monologue, so that I have a context of what I've just seen.
If you just watched that, though, what do you think?
Dickhead. Like, dickhead. Who are you? You're a dickhead. And I'm pro-vaxxing. I'm pro. But that you're a dickhead. Me too. That's what I think.
That's bad. It's having the opposite effect that I think he wants it to have, or his masters want it to have.
It's weird. It's just weird.
Oh, so I have to play that for you. Anyway, we got this message on, I think this was on Twitter this week, from somebody about Bulelo. Look at this. I love Cliff Central, but I wish Gareth Cliff could get rid of that black DA guy. I think it's Bulelo.
Am I DA just because I sound like a what? Because I
don't know what it is. Someone doesn't like you, Bulelo. Another day, another crit of Bulelo. That's what happens here.
Nico says with themselves.
Nico says that those guys on the Stephen Colbert clip look like a bunch of blue dildos on their heads. Yes, Gareth, Big Pharma pays the bills of all the shills. I mean, I'm certainly, if you look at all the latest entries into the billionaire category in America, 4 of them, I think, out of 6 are all Big Pharma people. And I'm not surprised. I mean, these vaccines have made a lot of people rich, but it's having that conspiratorial effect which it shouldn't have. If people just, well, we're in a pandemic, we need to get better, we need to get back to normal, this is the sensible thing to do. They're selling it so hard that it makes me very, very nervous. I don't understand it. It's really bad. I lost respect for Stephen Colbert and how his views were on politics 3 years ago, says Rebellious Ruth. I don't know. I really don't know. Anyway. Bolelo's a mensch, says Sweet Pea. Tell that guy to fark off. Okay, we will. All right, so we got a couple of headlines to get to this morning. Do you want to know what's going on in the news? Are you excited about what's going on in the news? All right, well, lucky you, because here we go. You've got to say it like Gedletlekisa, Pumi. Try again. Just put your middle finger here where the bridge of your nose is and go, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And you've got to give a at the end of it.
A what?
Like you've just taken a nice bite of something sweet.
That's where the difference comes. That's where the difference.
Exactly. All right, so listen to this. Princess Charlene, who we call Prisoner Charlene. So she apparently put out a cryptic post that has a whole lot of people concerned about her state of mind. Spending long months away from your loved ones can be a lonely experience. For Princess Charlene of Monaco, it must be extremely hard after being separated from her twins and Prince Albert for several months. The Monaco Royal regularly updates her 330,000 Instagram followers on her foundation and conservation work while she's staying in KwaZulu-Natal due to complications from a severe ear, nose, and throat infection. But her most recent post has left some questioning, especially the European press, if she's doing okay. So the cryptic post is this, and it was to coincide with the Monte Carlo Gala for Planetary Health. The first clip shows her saying, "I'm wishing Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation and Princess Charlene in Monaco Foundation for the evening's fundraiser a successful and magical moment." Now, what's wrong with that? It was the last clip that got everyone. It's very, very cold, right?
It's her husband,
it was the last clip, exactly, the last clip and caption that got attention that read, "As I was born of the ocean, so the ocean was born of me. I present to you a piece of both."
Oh, my God.
And then there's an image of Charlene wearing a tiara while she's submerged in water that was taken by a photographer. According to the publication, the video was widely interpreted as an attempt by the princess to show that she remains attached to Monaco. Not everybody saw it this way, with the newspapers in Monaco calling her message enigmatic, while Elle magazine said it was mysterious, and the Times said it raised concerns. And some people say that she left Monaco in a huff. She didn't leave because she was mad at me or anyone else. She was going down to South Africa to reassess her foundation's work there and take a little time off with her brother and some friends. So who knows?
You know who does too much? She's doing too much there with from the ocean. Michelle Obama, who's Bill Clinton, who's now the husband of somebody running in politics, and this lady. You're doing too much. You don't need to do the ocean thing. You're already rich. And also, can we appeal? If your partner is the president, can you please shut the hell up? Nobody cares. Like Bill, you had your time. Now it's your wife. We want to hear from her. Bill, we're done with you. But Michelle Obama is doing way too much. She did way too much. Like, I don't need to know what Barack Obama's wife is doing, please. And also to you, Miss Princess Lady, I don't need to know about what the ocean. What I'm from the ocean. Lady. It is me. And doing too much.
Well, speaking of royals, King Misuzulu, who's Pumi's new king, is expected to meet with all the major houses of the Zulu royal family in Ulundi on Wednesday in a bid to restore unity amid the raging feuds which continue at the royal court. The king of the Zulu nation has called a mass gathering of royals who will be embroiled in a bitter kingship dispute, or have been rather, since King Goodwill Zwelithini passed in March. Some royals have questioned the legitimacy of King Misuzulu as the rightful heir. The family have assured those who were not invited that their interests would be fully represented, while another faction who does not recognize him has cautioned family members about attending the meeting. So this has been going on for a long time. I mean, the king died in March, and it's now October, and they're still arguing about this. And this is because succession law is not clear. Like if you know what happens when the Queen of England dies, because for 1,000 years, the eldest son of that monarch takes over. Now, in the Zulu court, it's different, and there are different rules that come into play. But as much as some of that is cultural, some of it's traditional, some of it's political, and some of it has to do with them making the best of whatever situation there is, it makes it unclear. So you end up making half the people or a quarter of the people or whatever percentage of the people unhappy about the decision, and the rest are okay with it. And you're going to end up with conflict. So clear this up once and for all. This is our rule. This is what we do from now on.
You know, there's a series on, I think, HBO or something called Succession, which is also it's about that, right? It's about a family succession battle. And those things are always so fascinating because it happens. It happens in business when a founder dies or retires or is leaving. It happens, and we saw a couple of days ago, it happens in churches in this country too. A couple of days ago, I don't know if any of you saw the march in Durban because of the ruling by the Constitutional Court. I mean, this succession battle in this particular church, in the Shembe Church, for those of you who are listening who don't know, and then the ruling went one way. And what we saw in the march, those are the supporters of the person that lost. Just like
and there are a lot of them. A lot of people. I don't know if you saw the visuals.
The supporters of that person filled the streets of Durban Central, and I'm just like, this is it's a shit show at the best of times. Whoa.
Sorry.
Is he unhappy about the new Zulu King? What happened?
Carl only supports
the Shembe March.
Carl supports King. I want to be clear about this. Carl supports King Misuzulu. Okay.
Okay.
It's very clear. Very clear.
Jeez, Carl.
But those things, it's just hectic.
And it's important.
Power and money, hey? Power and money.
Yeah.
That's what all of these things are about.
And Pumi, I think we spoke about on the Burning platform. I mean, I was listening. I forget who the gentleman was who spoke about that for the stability, whether you agree with it or not. I mean, I think we should abolish all of it, but whatever, that's my own thing. It is important for the stability of the tribe in South Africa. I mean, the number of Zulu people and that region we need it for the stability. We saw what happened last time when Msheles went to jail. What happened?
Yeah, because
the power vacuum.
Yeah, we've spoken to people about precisely this on the Burning platform before, so it's a good point Bonello makes. Jeez. So David Makura, who's of course the Gauteng Premier, he says that our province, Gauteng, is ready to move to alert level 1. And I agree. In fact, I would say we're ready to move to alert level 0. The Premier is visiting vaccination sites in Kutsong on the West Rand, and he said, it's time. It's time now that we move to level 1 because this is unnecessary. All these curfews, all these stupid rules, these things that are making no difference. We are moving very fast in Gauteng to get people vaccinated. And therefore, there is no reason for people to keep on having to follow the dumb rules that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma keeps. Okay, we'll do this another month. So good for David Makura. I know that he's probably saying this because he realizes that lockdown is so unpopular, as I predicted more than a year ago. But he's also aware of the fact that the elections are coming up in a month's time. And this is probably something that he is saying in order to curry favor with the general electorate. And rightly so.
But from a fiscal point, sorry, Gareth. I'm just thinking from a fiscal point, it's like we also must become comfortable as Gauteng. I think everybody knows this is the engine that makes it all run. We need different rules here. We need to be off the leash now. If Gauteng isn't operating, South Africa will suffer financially, right? I don't think that's a hot take.
Yeah, I don't think the lockdowns have been very popular with anybody from the get-go. But now, even the people who thought they were a good idea before are starting to see that they haven't had terribly much effect anywhere in the world. And countries that did lock down very strongly had the same kind of result as countries that didn't. So they didn't make any difference. In fact, in some ways, you could argue that lockdowns had the opposite effect of good because of all the collateral damage to the economy and to everything else. So those countries that locked down hardest are going to take the longest to recover. And I'm not just talking about from the virus. Anyway, Told you so, told you so. We've been over this territory a million times. David Makura is finally on board. It takes politicians a long time because most of them are pretty stupid. Let's hope the other guy, says Mfundo, doesn't start a sub-Shembe church like the Catholic Church when it broke up and became many different churches in the Reformation, because that could happen, right?
Yeah.
Daniela says, I think Mbulelo should be the king of the Zulus. Best social experiment ever. Well, first of all, he's not Zulu, so that's not going to happen.
But what are you today? Xhosa or Pedi today?
Are you Pedi? Yeah, what are you?
Pedi,
well,
Xhosa,
it depends. It depends whether Kgalema Motlanthe has cleaned his act up. I don't know. What has he said lately? Because after that, BBC. So Xhosa for now. But yeah, let's see how it goes.
All right. All right. Then we've got to move on to something else, which I wanted to show you. So this is a chart of Leonardo DiCaprio's age. He's the line that's going up, the linear progression from the age of 24 to the age of 44, where he is at the moment. He's the same age as me. And those are his girlfriend's ages underneath. That's the more wavy line. The oldest he's ever dated is 25. And usually when a girl reaches 25, then he drops the age back down to 20, 21, 22, 23. He's never gone over 25. You can see his age keeps going up. Obviously, he's getting older every year, but the girls he dates, they all are sub 25. And when he reaches a 25, he goes back down again. That's his upper limit, no matter what his age is. Now, I want your comments on this, because Leo DiCaprio certainly looks better than many other 44-year-olds his age. He seems to be enjoying his life a whole lot more than most of us. And even though occasionally he opens his mouth to complain and bleat about the environment or whatever else it is, it doesn't stop him from using a private jet whenever he likes, or going on some friend's yacht, or having a happy time with whichever beautiful girl happens to be at his side. So any life lessons that we can learn from Leo DiCaprio based on this excellent chart, which has been compiled?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Can I see that chart again, please? Just 2 seconds.
Sure.
Let's see it.
There it is. And he's got Giselle, Bara Faley, Blake Lively, Erin Heatherton, Tony Guerra, Kelly Rohrbach, Nina Agdal, and Kamita Morane, who's his latest one. I hope I got some of the, or Camilla. I can't read those names, but there they are. I've never heard of half these people.
And who they type?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Listen, he does have a type. He does have a type, which is actually excellent self-awareness, is that, most of us are so, we want to fit some template that's made by other people. Leo DiCaprio says there are rules and we're sticking to them. Yeah. So he knows what makes him happy, and he's not going to go, oh, what's it going to look like if I'm with a 20-year-old? No, that's what makes me happy, and I'm going to stick to it. He's never going to whinge about his life. Never.
Well,
what a legend.
I mean, Cunning Stunt says, and I feel like Cunning Stunt's a little bitter here, but Cunning Stunt says it took him a while to win an Oscar. It might also take him a while to grow up. Yeah, but that sounds like someone who's bitter. It sounds like someone who's bitter because they've got the same linear progression as the girl that they're with, for example.
And what does grow up mean? Like it's so like Catholic, right? It's so puritanical. Like grow up and get a husband, get a wife. Like, no, we don't need to hear from you just because you're miserable after your third divorce or whatever. No, like, don't do that to us. Leo must do his thing. You doing your thing.
And it could also be that it could be that these girls all mature at the same rate, and when they get to 25, they get bored with him. It could be that, they realize they need something more at 25 than Leo DiCaprio. They're like, well, this guy's the same. Because certainly in the beginning, Giselle and the ones that he dated for a bit longer, you can see that they give him a few years, but when they get to 25, they might also want to fall off the Leo DiCaprio page.
Do you think that they like, as you start dating him at 22 or whatever, you kind of go, okay, have a ticking clock that says by 25, got to be out of here by 25, or he's got a countdown that says, another birthday.
Whoever. It certainly works. It's working for him because he is, as I said earlier, he's a paragon of youth, of enjoyment of his life. He's certainly attained all kinds of career successes and has done that in between all of this. But in terms of his dating history, I don't feel like Leo DiCaprio is someone you need to feel sorry for.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
I
not.
feel sorry for
Blake
you.
Lively and Giselle Bundchen. So no, he's fine. But on a very serious note, you know what might annoy most of us is it's what the 1% do better than us, right? It's that they do what they say they're going to do. Most of us are big at talking. Oh, I want to change my laugh, and he's doing what he says he's going to do. I'm going to date girls under 25. And what irks people is we don't have the chutzpah to do what we say we're going to do. No. Well, he's even better. He's not saying it. He's doing it. Because lots of people say things. He's doing it.
He's doing it.
A 95-year-old friend of mine always says, Junior, she calls me Junior. She says, hey, you are what you do, not what you say. Your character is what you do, not what you say. And Leo's what he does. And that
I love
people
this.
hate you when you do what you say you're going to do.
Graham is really poking the bear here, but he says it's funny how it's always women over 30 who are having a cry. Hey.
Oh God, Graham. Oh, Madiba. Jesus. Jesus.
I think there might be some like 40-year-old men who are not with 25-year-olds who are also having a cry.
Most of them because they can't be with 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
There's very few 20-year-olds who want to be with a 40-year-old, and there are very few 40-year-olds who want to be with a 20-year-old. But whatever blows
you've also got to be a type of a 44-year-old for a 25-year-old to want to be with you. That's the other thing.
I don't have a problem with that. I personally would not be unhappy with that outcome. Just saying. Anyway, I know what I was like. But
you know what
says
he
Robin,
doesn't get,
at 25. Leo. My poor boyfriends, I was a nightmare, she says. Well, okay. Yes, sorry, Pums?
You know what's also quite fascinating to watch is how nobody says, ooh, predator. If you were an older woman, with a younger man, oh Lord.
You think so?
I don't know. I don't know, because I don't have a problem, for example, with Jane Fonda, who's always around much younger men. I think that's fine. And she's in her 80s.
So I just read Gabriella Union's latest book, right? Got Anything Stronger. And she is 9 years older than Dwayne Wade. And the kind of hate she seems to be getting about, like, what? Just like 9 years. It's like, ooh, old woman with your old body. How dare you be old? How dare you be old and desire a younger man?
Red Robin says, my aunt is a cougar, but she has her limits. She says he has to be old enough to buy her a drink.
That's awesome.
Graham says, I call bullshit. Look at Ashton Kutcher with Demi Moore for all those years. Yeah. No one had a problem with that.
No.
Right?
No.
And look at Madonna. I mean, Madonna I don't think she's ever been with anyone her own age at any stage of her career.
I mean, that's tough. Madonna's, what 140? That'll be tough.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all very, very much fun and games.
Oh,
and
love that. Madonna's dating a 26-year-old. How do you people know this stuff?
26-year-old.
Melissa's on top of it. She knows what's going on.
That's awesome.
Good for you, Melissa. And Meryl
How old's
Streep
Madonna now? Like 60?
Is my favorite older woman. Madonna is 60. We talked about it just the other day. Let me just look it up.
60 and a bit, eh? And she's dating a 26-year-old.
Yeah.
Hey,
she is
the material girl, undefeated.
She's 63 years old.
Get him, material girl. Get him, 26-year-old. Yes, man. That's why she.
Good.
Oh, you know what? And Pumi's right. I was displaying toxic masculinity. I thought Guy Ritchie got rid of her. Meantime, material girl says, "You're old. Go to the scrap heap." 26-year-old upgrade.
Absolutely.
Younger, fresher, newer model.
I want to play you something before we wrap up this hour. I thought this is very sweet. We spoke about him earlier this morning, Prince Philip. They've done a little tribute where they've interviewed members of the royal family for the BBC. And the opening clip is just very, very sweet. It's Prince Charles talking about his dad on the day before he died. And I thought you might want to see this, because I think that the documentary's on the internet now or whatever, so you could probably watch it. But just this little clip is very sweet. Just watch this.
I was talking to him, the day before he died, and we were talking about his birthday, coming up. And I said, we're talking about your birthday, because he was getting a bit deaf. What? And I said, we're talking about your birthday and whether there's going to be a reception. He said, well, I've got to be alive for it, haven't I? He said. I said, I knew you'd say that. Anyways, it's a happy memory.
That's sweet. He goes, anyway, it's a happy memory. Where his dad was still taking the piss at like the day before his death. He's like, well, I've got to be alive.
Jeez, but he's looking old.
Charles, well, he is old.
Jeez.
His mother's 94 or something now, the Queen.
Jeez.
So he's still hanging on, waiting for his chance on the throne. But you know what? I think he's becoming more and more kind of respectable old man, because when Charles was younger, he was a disaster. And up to very recently, he was still a disaster. And now he's got this kind of just a village elder look to him, which I think makes him more acceptable. Anyway,
by the way,
sweet.
Can I just say,
yes,
you know my thoughts on all that royal nonsense. But
yeah,
hey,
you hate
that suit, my guy.
It's a good suit.
Take a look, man. Take a look.
Yeah,
that guy's old, but that thing is that's a suit.
It fits properly.
Yeah.
Do you think Mrs. Bowles had any effect on calming young Charles down?
Big
kind
time.
Of grounding
Big
him
time.
in,
Look, Pums, I've been the biggest supporter of Camilla from the get-go, because you can tell this is real love. The fairy tale, everybody tried to sell us the fairy tale as being Princess Diana. And while she was beautiful and glamorous and all of those things, and I cannot take any of that away from her, she wasn't the fairy tale. Yeah, and younger. The fairy tale was that this man was head over heels in love from the earliest age with Camilla. And despite all the trials and tribulations and the very complicated situation that he found himself in, or that he made for himself, that Diana also was part of, that the Queen and everybody else interfered in, eventually he ended up with his sweetheart. And she just loves him, and he just loves her, and they support each other. We should all wish for a relationship like that, where it's just so easy. They look so easy around each other. There's no awkwardness. You could see that they don't want anything from each other. She doesn't want to be queen. She was sticking around in the background, being dutiful. She doesn't look for attention. She's not needy. I think he really wants her around, and he feels very connected to her. And I think that's beautiful. That's the honest to God. That is the real fairy tale. People don't like it because it doesn't look as glamorous and, the beautiful young princess. But this is real love. And I think that's magic. There are very few places in life where we can point to that and say that's a real love story.
Kudos to her for pulling off the ultimate female move. One thing I have noticed about ladies as I get older is they will outweight anybody. And she went, I'll outweight that Diana thing. That's going to end.
That's right.
I'll be around.
That's right.
Yeah. So shout
and
out.
People don't mind. They hated her while Diana was still alive, and they hated her immediately after Diana died. And they were like, that she's the other woman, and she never tried to defend herself. She never did anything for attention like Meghan and Harry are doing. She just quietly went about the business, cutting ribbons, holding Charles's hand, making sure she was there in the background. And now people have kind of just come to accept her, because people's memory is short, and people actually don't really care about anyone else's relationships. They pretend to, but they
you know what I hope? You know what I hope? I hope, actually, Gareth, I love how you framed her now. I can't wait when she becomes queen and she does a total flip. Like, right.
She becomes the wicked stepmother.
Now.
Yeah.
All of those Diana statues, take them down. Charles, take them down like yesterday.
Can you imagine? She
none of those
like
frocks that Diana used to wear can be sold in the United Kingdom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She goes full on.
Yeah.
That English rose, no more.
Yeah. No more.
Yeah.
Don't sell it anymore.
We demand the horseshoe as our badge from now on. I don't know. Anyway, it's all good fun. We've got the Burning Platform coming up in a short while. A good one this morning, which I think you're going to love. It is with Pumi. It is with Kanthan. And our guest this morning is Rob Hersov, who's been making waves in the news in the last couple of days. All of that's coming. Pums, you wanted, just before we go to the break, you wanted to talk about R. Kelly. We went over it yesterday, but I'm sure you've got something to say.
You? I missed your show yesterday, guys.
No, but I want to hear what you think of it, because some people are really, really angry and want him to rot in jail. Other people are like, we can still listen to his music, even if we don't disagree with him. And we had a huge debate. What's your position?
He should rot in jail. But, so obviously with the verdict, the big thing that's making a big return is, do you remember that scene in the Boondocks when he first got away, when he first was kind of acquitted?
Yeah.
And that, watching the people outside the courthouse still going, we believe in R. Kelly. There was that chubby woman going, we're not giving up on R. Kelly. I'm just like, guys, the guy can sing. Okay, we get it. He can sing. He's got good music. But he needs to be under the jail. The kind of shit he's been allowed to get away with. I
agree with you.
And I liked his music as much as the next person, but I also understood why the Mute R. Kelly movement had to be, because you had to take away where his source of power was.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That I was just like.
Well, we were talking about how people they're not able to separate.
Is somebody calling me Mbulelo Tinta on this show here?
Oh, did someone call you Mbulelo Tinta? Sorry, there's Pumi Mashiko.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got to get to the Burning Platform, which is coming up in a second. But it does seem interesting to me that with this R. Kelly thing, it gives people room again to assess whether or not they are personally capable of splitting off a song, which they might like, from an artist who's a horrible person. And if you can't do that, you have no business being on the internet, because you're exactly the kind of person who also cancels people for an opinion that you don't like. So it's an instant indicator of childishness to me, is that people want to cancel. You know what
I'm going to do? I'm going to take like those loudspeaker backpacks, you know, in Rosebank where all the trust fund kids sit. Like if you're not there's restaurants where if you're not an interracial couple, you can't even go there, kind of like PC vibe is. And then just blast out, a city of justice, a city of love, Gotham City, and just see what they do.
You will be awesome. Lynched. You'll be lynched. They will kill you. All right, guys, we'll be back in a moment or two. The Burning Platform is brought to you by Nando's. That's next week. We've got the great Kanthan Pillay rejoining us today for an episode of the show. And we've got Rob Hersov joining us too, people who always make the news, sometimes inadvertently. And they're both ready to talk to us about all the events of this week, all the big stories that affect all of us, and the things that we're most interested here in South Africa. So stick around for all of that and more on the way next.
Stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, now there's just not stopping it. The beat won't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Stopping it, the beat won't stop, now there's just no stopping it. The beat won't stop, now there's just no stopping it. The beat won't stop, don't stop, don't stop. The beat won't stop, now there's just no stopping it. The beat won't stop.
Yo, I put it like wow, this that sound. These oaks don't work hard like me, I hope they know by now.
Quick solutions is key to a great economic quarter. Use the Nando's app to order a quarter chicken with any single side for only 49 Rand in just 20 seconds. Nando's. Fire it up. T's and C's apply.
Welcome back to the Gareth Cliff Show on cliffcentral.com. And this morning it is time for the Burning Platform, which is our opportunity to go through some of the events of the moment, some of the stuff that's been happening in the last couple of days, discuss them, unpack them, tear them apart, say some things, give some opinions, have some fun, and then see what happens. Just watch where the dust settles. All of that's coming up in a minute. Let me reintroduce to you an old favorite and someone who makes a return to the ring this morning with us. It is Kanthan Pillay. Hey, Kanthan, how are you?
Morning, guys. Good to be back. It's the school holidays, so I've got the ability to pop by back on the show.
I'm very happy. We wondered what the reason was that you were able to join us again, because you've been the responsible parent for the school run for the longest time.
Yeah, well, this, particularly when you've got a teenage kid, which, and trust me, most of us don't actually understand just how this can snot-clup you at the point at which your dear sweet child suddenly turns into this, bit of a monster. But I love her to bits all the same.
Okay, well, at least you're honest. Most parents are dishonest about when their children give them a headache.
Pumi, I see you've got a new set of cans. Well done.
Welcome, Kanthan. It's so good to see you. Also, I see your salt and peppers become more salt than pepper.
It is. Well, this comes from turning 60, which I did earlier this month.
Yes, and happy birthday from everybody here at cliffcentral.com on your birthday. But I just want to clear up for anybody who thought that Kanthan was being rude. When he says a new set of cans on Pumi, he means her headphones. I just want to be clear about that.
Can you see that? You can't see my cans.
All right, so guys, we've got a special guest this morning, and somebody who's really made waves in the last couple of weeks. Inadvertently, he was speaking at a conference, and it got an enormous amount of attention. He's a South African entrepreneur, a private investor. He has founded and owns a number of companies in the sport, media, finance sectors, and he's building a new airport in Cape Town, which we should all be excited about, because couldn't Cape Town do with another airport? The current one that they have, you have to walk 7 kilometers from the plane to collect your bags, then another 7 kilometers from where you collect your bags to where you find your rental car. And then if you're lucky, you drive for another 8 kilometers to get your rental car out of the airport. But, some people enjoy that. He's building a new airport. He's also started the Cape Stock Exchange, which launched this week. And we, I think, by and large, we all welcome any way for people to invest in the local economy. He's a big believer in the local economy, despite the fact that he's not a big believer in many of the decisions that have led us to this current economic point of reference. And here's Rob Hersov. It's a pleasure to have you on, Rob. How are you doing, Mr. Hersov? Are you well?
Hey, Gareth. Yeah, it's been a kind of a rough ride this last week, but it is school holidays, and we're in the Breda River, and I found a spot sort of outside where the kids, and there's so many children here, and it's packed into the house. There are 3 families. when the kids hopefully won't make noise in the background. But lovely to see you again.
No. Well, it's good to have you on. So I've got to refer to the clip that has been going viral. I mean, it's had hundreds of thousands of views in the last while. You were speaking at a conference with Alec Hogg in Biz News, and you were talking about the state of the economy. You were one of many speakers. I don't know who any of the other speakers were, because you're the only one who seems to have made the impact that you did. And of course, Rob, this comes with, it's a double-edged sword. It comes with huge support and acclaim and people saying, thank God there's someone who's speaking out. But it also comes with the other side, which is that you will receive enormous amounts of criticism. Can I just say up front that I think it's great that someone in business, because we very seldom get people in business who speak out about anything. They're always terribly timid. They're always afraid to make waves. They're afraid to make enemies. They're afraid to upset their erstwhile political either masters or interlocutors. And I got to say that it makes me very happy to know that there are people like you who are willing to say things.
Thanks, Gareth. I'm most proud of my wife, or what my wife and what my father separately said. And both of them said, you've spoken truth to power. You're going to take the pain for that now. But, you've stood up and spoken when others haven't. But I want to give a quick bit of credit to someone, because I did name names and I shouldn't have done that. I was firing from the hip and I was being a bit emotional, and there was some anger in that. And Sim Shabalala messaged me because I named him, and he said, Rob, I have absolutely no problem at all. I know you were talking to corporate South Africa as a whole. You're right to do so. I mean, what an impressive man to actually say that to me.
Sure.
And I could only think of some big names, and his was one of them. But to credit to him. I added a few great, as you might have noticed, in the last week, because I'm actually not on social media. So I'm not on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram at all. So I don't know the horrible things saying about me, or nice things. But a lot of it's come through anyway, and here I am. So it is what it is.
Well, I'm for one, I'm very glad that you've done what you've done. And I think Pumi and Kanthan and I are used to saying things that get us into trouble, although because we're always saying them, I think people are used to us causing trouble. With you, you speak from a place where usually people are quite happy to just toe the line, and they're happy to do what they have to do to keep their businesses going and try not to court controversy wherever they can. I mean, Kanthan, you obviously have seen this. Pums, you've seen it too. Anything you'd like to say before we get stuck into some current affairs?
Yeah, I think Rob is in a unique position, and it's actually a great position, where none of the ecosystems that he plays in is actually dependent on the largesse of government, which means that, unlike someone who's in the banking sector, unlike someone who's in the telecom sector, where government is able to exert very real pressure on your business at a number of levels, because there's a regulatory framework that governs that. And so if you want to play in those sectors, you're actually dependent on just shutting the fuck up so that government doesn't give you a hard time. And because Rob is actually playing in a space where he's not dependent on government's goodwill, it means that he is actually able to speak truth to power, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, Pums, do you have anything to say about this?
I mean, there were a lot of thought starters in what Rob had to say. And one of the things, and it's the headline that they gave the video clip that went viral, is Nelson Mandela and how he would vote if he had to vote, which kind of, always gets me and it's a trope that a lot of people put out, particularly the DA. Herbert Mashaba got wrapped over the knuckles a couple of days ago also about that, because he came out and said, oh no, Nelson Mandela wouldn't vote for the DA, wara wara, But the thing that really it sparked in my brain, Robin, I'd love to hear your view on this, is if you think about people like, why stop at Nelson Mandela? Let's think about Helen Suzman. Do you think Helen Suzman, a person who fought for the right of South Africans to be able to move freely around this country, a person who fought anti-apartheid and passed laws, do you think she would vote for the DA, given that the DA also likes to call people in fellow South Africans economic refugees in their own country? Do you think she would vote for the DA?
You know, we can even go back to Mahatma Gandhi and other people that were raised in this country, may not have been born here. You know, extraordinary people have spent a great part of their lives coming to South Africa and living here and being part of our magnificent country. I think the future is a coalition government. I really do. And I think it'll be made up of a group of different parties who will agree on the main subjects, but disagree on maybe some of the more fringe subjects. And that's, I think, where South Africa's heading. And it's not a bad thing either.
Well, Rob, just to go back to your comments in that clip, which has gone everywhere, Michael says, Rob's words broke through the bullshit of our time. And that is what is needed right now. We need to have the conversation his words have activated. So thank you for continuing it here. In terms of what you didn't say in that speech, and what I saw you picked up in a subsequent interview, is the action plan to make things better. And you've hinted that already with this discussion around coalition politics and how that's likely to be the next big outcome. I just want to say to those people who have a problem with you and people who think that you're just one of those people who likes to criticize, did mention this at the introduction, but you are an investor in South Africa. You live in this country, despite the fact that you were in the UK for some time. You moved back here, counter to the prevailing winds. You are building infrastructure projects, which technically in South Africa have only ever really been done by government. And you're involved very much in trying to up the skills, the technological sector of South Africa. How has all of that been received? Or are people just pretending that you're not involved in that so that they can criticize you?
So some people got a bit confused because I said South Africa is uninvestable, but I was talking from a foreign direct investment point of view. I was saying, foreigners looking at the world, at Africa, at South Africa, what allocation would they make to South Africa? And I said none to South Africa because, we're overregulated. We just got the wrong people in power and the wrong policies. So foreigners would be sort of crazy to invest, was my comment. But if you're in South Africa, you've got to get on, build businesses and try and invest, employ people, make a difference. And I'm back here, living here. Funny enough, my brother left for the UK when I came back to South Africa. And then 2 years later, my sister left for America. So my mum and dad are alive. Dad's 95 and mum's 88 today. Happy birthday, mum.
Oh, happy birthday to her. And they live in Johannesburg, right?
They live in Johannesburg. I love Johannesburg. Yeah. They want to come and base themselves in Cape. They're from Joburg. So I'll probably be the last Hersov to live in this country, looks like. My older kid left. So I'm committed to invest. If I see a good opportunity, I will take that advantage and invest. And I love the tech sector, by the way. I'd love if we could talk about technology being the savior of South Africa and the future of Africa.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. You listed a couple of really big names, and you say that you wish you hadn't named names, but sometimes that's necessary because otherwise people just hear you speaking in generalities and in platitudes. And there are lots and lots of powerful and influential people in South Africa. What do you think it'll take for us to get the important powers that be to start talking the way that we need to have people talking? Do you think that they'll have to be safely ensconced in another country? Do you think they'll have to actually feel the pain themselves in terms of their share portfolios? What do you think it'll take?
Well,
sorry,
I'm going to get the timing wrong, and I'm going to get within 12 months, a group concerned activist journalist types wrote a sort of open letter and published it in the newspaper. We want the following to happen. And they did it as a group, safety in numbers. And I think that needs to happen first. I picked on Adrian Gore, and his name just came up because he's just such a prominent, successful South African-based business person. But, I can't remember him ever saying anything against the government. Maybe he's out there trying to tender for something, or maybe he's who knows what he's doing behind the scenes, but he's not saying anything publicly. But if he got together with a group of prominent business people, published a plan of action, a positive plan of action for the country, and did it together, that could be a very good first step.
Let me ask all three of you this question, because I mentioned it in the headlines this morning. David Makura, who's the Premier of Gauteng, obviously we've got an election coming up in a month's time. And David Makura is looking for ways that he can position himself favorably in a province that isn't necessarily likely to go the ANC's way. He said, we've got to end lockdown, or he said, certainly bring it down to level 1. I don't think you're going to have much disagreement among the three of you. But are there any nuances that we could take from this? I also noticed that the e-toll discussion is coming up again. Is this just plain old electioneering, or is there more to it? Are South Africans now full of lockdowns? Do we see that they've served very little purpose, that they've done a lot of collateral damage? Or is that just me wish thinking what I believed a year ago to be the truth now, finally, for even the politicians? Kanthan, you go first.
Why me, Gareth? Look, Makura is clearly recognizing the fact that the last municipal election, the ANC was unsuccessful in actually securing a majority, which is what enabled at that time a broad coalition. And look, let's call it a coalition between the DA and the EFF. It ended up being a disaster at the time. And something that we discussed on this show at the time was really what should have been happening is for the DA and the ANC to actually have been working and setting up a coalition at that point. Because, frankly, the EFF are in it just to cause trouble. And they don't really have a positive contribution to make. They got into that disastrous coalition with Mashaba. He basically bribed them with access to particular contracts in the city center in exchange for being allowed to run the city under the EFF's terms, which was a bit of a disaster. So at this point, really, we need to have people in the DA in particular who are honest enough to be able to say that if the ANC is willing to accede to the following broad set of principles in terms of everything, then we're happy to work with them. And that actually provides an entry point to actually start that discussion. But that's not going to happen before the elections actually happens. But should those discussions be happening behind the scenes? Yes, it is going to.
It's all going to depend on the numbers. Pumi, it was Helen Ziller who said that, I think at the last elections, which were national, but she said, the only hope that we have here of getting a meaningful coalition is precisely what Kanthan's talking about now. But she did say it a couple of years ago. She said the ANC and the DA need to come to terms on certain things, and they need to kind of elbow the EFF right out, because at the moment the EFF still think of themselves as kingmakers, even though they do not have the majority in a single ward anywhere in South Africa. What's your feeling on an ANC-DA coalition? And do you think, to go back to David Makura, do you think there's a huge amount of promising and nonsense going on instead of actual practical solutions?
Of course. I think the one thing that we see across the board and every time, particularly in the local elections, right, is that our politicians call themselves politicians, but they're not very good at politicking. Because this is where what Kanthan talks about is a behind the scenes angling and having conversations and agreements that will move the dial forward, that will give service delivery to people. That's what politics is about. It's about a give and take. It's about agreeing on certain principles, even if you disagree on the big broad strokes, even if you disagree nationally, but in the local environment where you are supposed to be about service delivery. And the local elections are about the potholes, they're about the traffic lights, they're about the sewage system, those things. That's where you kind of have to come together and say, right, this is what we need to deliver to the people. How can we do it best? How do we work together to do it best? The ANC is going to lose ground. The ANC is going to lose ground. The worst thing that can happen to all of us is if less people show up to the polls because they won't vote for the DA or they won't vote for the EFF and they can't vote for the ANC, because the ANC is still going to be able to mobilize their stronghold to go and vote, and it'll just give them the numbers that they need.
So, Rob, how do you feel about the upcoming elections? Do you think it's going to be a watershed moment, or do you think it's just another kind of point on the graph of general decline in politics? People have lost faith in almost all the political parties. Do you think that there are some leaders in those political parties who can turn this around? Yes.
I think the ANC will get shredded. I think a lot of people will not vote, which is a huge pity because a non-vote is actually a vote for the ANC. I think the ANC will get shredded. But I do think your idea of people working together, including with the ANC, makes huge sense. I'll give you one example. Someone I know pretty well and like very much, and who is smart, is Khosis Zolani Matthews. And he has been recently appointed head of PRASA. And he said to me, I've got the second worst job in South Africa, the worst being fixing SA.
SA, yeah.
Shredded. I drove from that to...
Sorry, you're breaking up a bit, Rob. I know that you're in a place where there isn't a huge amount of signal. Just start with the process story again. It seems to come and go, his connection.
Yeah,
okay, so apologies. Let me move.
Yeah, just see if we can get a
friend of mine.
Get a slight. Yeah, we can hear you a little bit better now. Just see if that should be better. Okay, go for it.
Gareth, I think maybe he should try and reconnect.
Let's try and reconnect.
And let's try and reconnect him. And while he's reconnecting, maybe
we'll bring him back. So I'll ask Simpiwe to just sort that out for us in the meantime.
Thank you.
Just quickly, to have Kanthan back here is very nice, and lots of people have questions for Kanthan, so we'll get to some of those in a minute. But on this matter of like coalitions, I hear from the DA certainly that they're not prepared to go into coalitions with the EFF anymore. They've got a values disagreement with them. Is that what you're talking about, Kanthan, when it comes to like agreement on certain broad strokes, or as Fumi says, some of the local detail? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that is pretty much the case, because there are fundamental inconsistencies between the platforms of the Democratic Alliance and of the EFF. Whereas technically, if you look at what the ANC's broad brushstrokes would be, I can't think of anything in the Freedom Charter, as an example, that the DA would generally have problems with, because almost everything that you find in the Freedom Charter can actually be interpreted in the light of our current constitution, which certainly the DA doesn't seem to have a problem with. So the idea really of trying to effectively force the ANC out, as opposed to trying to finesse the ANC into a place where the ANC needs to behave itself. Let me give you a very specific example. Let's say the ANC gets to, 45% in Johannesburg, which is really the most significant place, because Johannesburg's GDP is bigger than that of Cape Town and of Durban and of the shithole formerly known as Port Elizabeth, and all of those things put together. And which is what makes it the most significant place to be in the country. Now, if you have a scenario where the DA turns around and says, well, let's say the DA gets 30% in Johannesburg, which is a very real possibility, and I hope that it is the case, but it's still not enough to actually form a government. But the DA turns around and says, all right, we're willing to support the ANC in terms of running the city, on condition you do the following things. So all tenders become open to public scrutiny through a public participation platform. Every bit of the way in which the money is spent gets put out in the open, public scrutiny, if necessary, pull in blockchain technology so that every bit, every transaction is actually recorded in stone. Mm-hmm. And hey, guess what happens? That actually removes the ability of the ANC to be stealing, as they have been doing. But it also means that if you have people who are competent within the ANC, and trust me, there are competent people within the ANC, but they are so trapped by the party structure, which actually requires that they pay homage to the party before they can do any delivery.
Right.
This means that they have to find ways to actually play by the party rules and effectively become criminals. But if the DA can shine the cold light of day upon the scenario, which I think that they can pull off, then I think that becomes a bit of a game changer. But this requires that mindset shift so that we get to that stage where we're talking about the end goal in terms of making a better South Africa, as opposed to the DA being the party that wants to govern. Look, let's be very clear. The DA, wherever they do govern better than the ANC, and we've seen that consistently throughout the country. But they are not at the stage where they're going to be able to achieve that in Johannesburg yet. So how do you get better outcomes? Well, we need to look at stuff like that.
Well, Dogozo is joining you in the comments there and saying pretty much the same thing. So, Rob, we've got you back. I just want to quickly ask you to finish your story about Zolani Matthews, who's taken over at Prasa, and just what he said. You broke up after you said he's got the second worst job in South Africa, the worst being fixing SAA.
No, fixing Eskom.
Eskom. Oh, right. Okay.
He's been put in charge of Prasa. He's taken a job that is almost unfixable. 3 lanes highway from King Shaka up to the Drakensberg, 2 lanes full of trucks all the way. And the reason being the rail network's collapsed. So he has a very, very difficult job. And I think the previous security teams have probably been part of the thievery. And he is a very smart, focused fellow, and I rate him very highly. And he said to me, I want to bring in the best people for the job, whichever political party they come from, whichever part of South Africa they come from. And that's the kind of attitude that can fix this country. His sister is Nalodi Pandor, foreign minister. And I haven't met her yet, but he is the future of South Africa.
Well, that's an interesting point and something that I hadn't thought of at all. These parastatals have been run so badly by everybody who's been put in charge of them, but it does seem like Eskom is starting to make some ground up. I mean, can we give a little credit where it's due? I think we haven't. I know that this is slim pickings, and in the land of the blind, the one-eyed is king. But as far as I can tell, we haven't experienced outrageous load shedding for a couple of months, and I'm touching wood as I say this to you. But it must mean that someone is starting to take stock and take control and trying to fix things in Eskom, whether it's the new CEO or his whole team. Let's not give too much credit because this is their basic job. This is what you do just to your entry-level conditions for being in that position. But I do think that there are signs that there are people who now are starting to realize the political cost of ruining these state-owned enterprises is now so high for the ANC that they actually can't afford to have all of them fail anymore. And by being optimistic.
You're being very sensible and reasonable. We just need more of those people. So take South African Airways as an example, which is basically closed down for the time being.
Yeah.
One of the main investors that is trying to resuscitate South African Airways is Harith. And I know people have said Harith have investment from the PIC, therefore they're conflicted. But the PIC made a lot of sensible investments along the way, in addition to some very, dubious ones. And you know what I'm talking about, particularly in the media sector. Harith is an excellent, excellent investment company. And, I would rate them as a head and shoulders one of the best. And they are black empowered, but I would, regardless of that, they're an incredibly good, very efficient, very professional investment company, like Royal Bafokeng, for example. So you would want someone like that getting behind a state-owned enterprise. And I think the future for black empowerment is privatizing state-owned enterprises and ensuring that they have a majority new black industrialists. It would be nice to see some new faces running those state enterprises. Privatize them, but make them black empowered.
Okay. You want to make a comment on that, Pums?
No, I'm thinking about what one of the key fundamental breakdowns in our local communities is the fact that we have such high unemployment. And the income of municipalities is also rates and taxes and the people within that environment. That's where the income is. Kanthan talks about why Johannesburg is so important. But actually, what we really have a problem with is the fact that we have municipalities in this country that have completely collapsed because they've been mismanaged, but they are unable to get out of that rut because we also have municipalities. I was in Danhauser a week and a half ago. In that municipality, one ward, 74% of the people in that ward are unemployed. There is no way that that municipality is going to be able to get out of that rut because they can't make any money. They can't charge people for rates and taxes. Even if they did, 74% of them are unemployed. Part of it's this terrible cycle that we're in, and part of the problem is the fact that we're in this economic hole. And how do we get out of to be able to begin to change things as well? So on the one side, it's mismanagement, but on the other side, it's also the municipalities just can't pay for it. They can't raise the finance.
Well, can we just agree that our labor laws are the fundamental problem that we have here, Pumi? And if you get rid of all of the obstacles to people being able to get work at whatever money is actually available, then the country will take off. And this obsession that we have with minimum wages and with decent work and all of that kind of stuff. Pumi, I know you take exception to the term economic refugee. I don't have a problem with that with the term. In fact, the best possible refugees anywhere in the world are economic refugees rather than political refugees, because those end up being entrepreneurs. They are the people who are actually willing to do whatever it takes to build businesses from scratch, and they move to where the greatest opportunities are. That's why we have a scenario in Johannesburg where we've actually got the population growing by better than 7% a year, simply because of the fact that this is where the opportunities are to make money. And people are making money.
Kanthan, I don't have a problem with the term economic refugees. I have a problem with the term that South Africans should be called in South Africa economic refugees. That's where the past laws came from. That's where influx control was about. I don't have a problem with economic refugees. If you're coming from Zimbabwe, if you're coming from Malawi, if you're coming from any other country and you need refugee status, that is fine. But South Africans are allowed to move wherever they want to move.
Absolutely, but you can still characterize them if they've moved from the Eastern Cape, where we know there are no opportunities whatsoever, to the Western Cape.
They are not refugees.
What is the right term? Economic migrants?
They are South Africans. They are South Africans who've decided to move to better opportunities.
And that's exactly what happens in the case of people from Zimbabwe who move here, and they actually do fantastically well. And ditto in the case of people who move from the Eastern Cape to the Western Cape. But one of the problems that we have in South Africa, and this constantly drags us down, is we get so obsessed around terminology that we don't actually interrogate the fundamental truth behind what people end up saying. This is why Helen Zille's comments about colonialism and Singapore became the boiling point that it did in this country. It's because we are so obsessed with nitpicking around what sort of terminology that gets used. Never mind the fact that nearly every one of us who participates in this conversation in our country is actually speaking in English, which for most of us in this country is not our mother tongue, and we are trying to find common ground in this language that is not our own language. And what do? We start nitpicking around who's got a better understanding of English. The fundamental problem is that the Eastern Cape is a fuck up. The DA runs the Western Cape well. And as a direct result of that, people take refuge in the competence of the Democratic Alliance of the Western Cape. And it really is that simple. But I actually want to touch on something that Rob was talking about earlier in terms of people within South Africa actually stepping up and looking for black entrepreneurs. And I think the object lesson, Rob, that we must take a look at is the example of Jack Ma, who got spectacularly smacked down at the point at which there was meant to be the IPO of Jack Ma's greater empire, and Xi Jinping stepped in and effectively pulled out the rug from under him. And the way in which our national government is structured right now means that is always the problem. It doesn't really matter how competent you might happen to be. Ro Koza, for example, at the time that he was chairperson of Nedbank, speaking truth to power, he got smacked down, from a dizzy height, really. And that problem is going to persist. And it will persist until such time as the ANC drops below 50%. And the most dangerous time is going to be between now and the next national election, because this is when the ANC is doing its damnedest to take every possible page out of Xi Jinping's book and to consolidate its own grip on power. And Ramaphosa is the chief praise singer for that particular agenda, which is why he's so dangerous.
Well, Rob, you can respond to both. Yeah, go ahead.
So you said that my presentation at the business conference eclipsed everyone else's speeches, and who else was there? No one can remember. There was one presentation that took my breath away. Gigi Alcock, who grew up with activist parents in Msinga in a mud hut, speaks fluent Zulu, knows the Zulus inside out, is a Zulu, and he gave the most incredible presentation that took my breath away. It's on his concept of Kasi economics, which is township, informal settlement economics. What's going on there? And what's going on there is breathtaking. Everyone on the outside in the sort of wealthy world thinks it's just spaza shops. It's not. There are industries, there are businesses, there are companies, there are entrepreneurs, there's dynamism in this incredibly informal sector where people are making real money despite the government. They don't even believe there's a government. They just get on with building businesses and creating a new economy. And they've incorporated technology. There's a business called Yebo Fresh, where people in the informal settlements and townships order by WhatsApp in small batches. The batches get collated into bigger batches and get delivered. And they get delivered to central points, which then de-batch them, and they get delivered to people's homes. So there's a combination of incredible informal economy dynamism and technology, and these people couldn't give a damn about the governments. They ignore all the rulings. They get on with building their own municipalities. They create their own power systems, their own grids, and that's the future. It's a libertarian future. So South Africa has an informal economy that is thriving despite the government, and that gives me such excitement and energy.
So I just want to refer back to something Kanthan brought up here, because it is the greater global context that we're in. China has suddenly come face to face with the first real challenge of their centralized economy in this mounting debt crisis, which is a huge problem over there. And I want to hear from all three of you on this. They also tried to ban, or did successfully ban, cryptocurrency, but it didn't really hit cryptocurrency in the chops like it has before, because even that is now starting to become a power and a force unto itself, which doesn't require the say-so of Xi Jinping. And maybe this is a double wake-up call for Cyril and those who are still big fans of the Chinese centralized controls and the way of kind of making the economy your bitch, if you forgive me for that crude way of putting it. These things are good indicators to ordinary people in ordinary places who are trying to make a living, that actually in the long run they may just win.
You can't hold human ingenuity down. If people want to do something, they'll do it. They'll find ways around the regulations, and with technology, it's even easier. So, the savior for us in South Africa is technology. If our education's a disaster, everyone will have a smartphone in the very near future connected to the internet. Everyone. There's fiber being rolled out in the townships. Dietlef Mare has found a way to deliver fiber to the home in the informal settlements at a cost where he can make money and people can get fiber. So this will just go around existing structures. You can't hold human ingenuity down. We're going to win in the end.
Yeah, what do you say to China's latest behavior and the trouble they've got to deal with here, Kanthan? You keep an eye on China.
I think the interesting thing that you need to trace everything back to is the same problem that has gripped us in South Africa over the past, 10 years pretty much, which is the question of electricity. If you go to Twitter right now and you search for China electricity, you'll discover that China is actually facing the worst power crisis in its entire history. It's just not able to generate enough electricity to meet its needs. And why is it not able to meet and to generate enough electricity? Well, because the price of coal has gone through the roof. And 70% of China's power comes from coal. Now, understand that China is actually the world's largest installed base of renewables. So they've got more solar than anyone else. They've got more wind power than anyone else. They've got more hydro than anyone else. But still, 70% of that economy of what is it, 1.5 billion people, comes from coal. And the price of coal has gone through the roof. It's gone through the roof mainly because of the fact that nobody's opening up new coal mines, because of the fact that there is such pressure on everyone to move towards renewables. China needs to buy coal on the open market, but then China is facing a debt crisis. And so it's not able to actually get access to the money to buy coal at the highly inflated prices that we are seeing right now. And so what are they doing? They're telling industries to shut down production for a couple of days a week. Now, that is an absolute disaster, because remember that the entire world has been using China as its outsourced low-cost labor factory for the longest time.
Right.
So all of the things that you are seeing, China shutting down factories for a couple of days a week, China saying no to crypto. Why? Because crypto is incredibly energy intensive. You need electricity in order to play in the crypto space. So
but
all
also,
of that kind of stuff.
Aren't they also dealing with their own version of the subprime housing crisis that we saw in the United States a short while ago? There's this huge company, Evergrande or whatever it is. Yeah, that is suddenly in debt to the tune of something like 10 times what Eskom has ever even imagined it could be in debt to. And this is going to be a crisis that China can't just push under the carpet like so many others. Right, Pums?
It's like a Lehman Brothers moment, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, and China, everybody's been talking about if China's economy will overtake the US. And looking at all of the things that are happening right now in China and what Kanthan's talking about, and I mean, they have been pumping more money into coal-powered power stations. They are, if they have this kind of Lehman Brothers moment, then it's going to trigger an even bigger, broader meltdown once again of economies around the world, especially here in Africa. It's gonna hit us. It's gonna hit us badly.
Well, the other thing that we've got to look at here is that within China, there are huge tensions because it's all kind of held together with the promise of growth. And there are parts of China that without that promise of growth, and once the economic realities start to kick in, especially when it comes to debt and to things like this housing crisis that we're talking about now, the Lehman Brothers moment, the crypto thing, all of those things that are starting to indicate, hang on, they're not as unassailable as they were before. Without that growth rate, China has no promise for its ordinary citizens. And once they become a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit less comfortable with what Beijing is trying to tell them what to do, I think things start to unravel fairly quickly. And that's something we've all got to be very cognizant of. Do you agree, or do you think that that's pie in the sky?
I think that the best possible thing right now is to have a China collapse. Because remember that the reason why most of our economy ended up shutting down is because we outsourced all of the things that we used to be good at to China. I mean, just think about textiles, for example. We used to have a thriving textile industry in this country until we passed the Labor Relations Act, at which point all of our manufacturing in the textile space got outsourced to China. Now, if you have a scenario where China actually collapses, it then forces a situation where we then start looking at creative ways to bring that stuff back home. And we actually have the capacity to do that. It's just that right now, we can't compete with China paying its workers $2 a day and we pay people $2 an hour. It just doesn't work out. So
Rob,
it will be good for us.
Rob, what's your view on the world of global economics at the moment? And as someone who's invested in many countries and who has an interest in the global ups and downs, how do you feel about those comments with regard to China? How do you feel about where America's at the moment, and how we fit into that scheme of things?
So let me look at it from an Africa perspective. The decolonization of Africa took place from the north to the south. It started in Kenya, Tanzania, then northern Rhodesia, Zambia, and Malawi, and came south. In South Africa in 94, You can call it decolonization, but all the liberation movements went from north to south. The same thing's happening today. Look at Malawi and look at Zambia, and all of them have had terrible engagements with China. Where China owns, has basically funded certain infrastructure projects, but then taken in return 10 times the amount in minerals and whatever. There have been terrible deals done. Malawi is rid of China. Zambia, the new president, HH, a fantastic guy, is getting rid of China. And so it will go. And I do think Zimbabwe's next. I think Zimbabwe is going to be, disconnecting itself from the Chinese, opening itself for business. And I think in 2023, when the next election happens in Zimbabwe, you will see a reformer come to power. Chamisa, hopefully, will run. And then in 2024, it's South Africa. So I think the positive free market movement is coming south, and it's coming here too. And that's disconnecting China from Africa, which is a good thing.
Well, it's about bloody time. I mean, we have the largest young population of hungry and unsaturated people and markets in the world. This is obviously the place that all of that needs to happen. And we also know that we've got tremendous talent on this continent, and we have serious problems to solve, which is even more urgent. And as a result of that, the market usually fills those cracks, and those cracks start to expand, and then new things burst out. We can only hope so. Pums, do you want to comment on any of that before we move on?
The fact that we have this hugely young population, and look, for me, I think it's definitely something that, looking into the future, could be a resource. But I think the thing that makes me worry, and Kanthan, you say an implosion in China would be good for us, is I don't know if the skills are there to go back to those glory days. I think we are going to have a big mismatch of skills. So the people that used to work in the textile industries are probably on their way out of the work, and we don't have the young people to go into those spaces. So reskilling is going to be a very important part of how we can become competitive in the near future. And we need bright ideas of how we do that. How do we retool young people? And this huge versioning, what do they call it? A tinderbox. Young people that are unemployed and unemployable is what we currently have.
I can see Rob's brain ticking away there. Rob, what are you thinking?
Education to edutech just excites me so much. And I said in my presentation, the 3 R's, which is an expression, by the way: reading, writing, and arithmetic. No writing is a W. But
yes,
reading, writing, get the basics right. The rest will follow. But programming, coding, and everything related to technology is the future. And the reskilling needs to happen not to create textile factory workers, but to create young people that are able to speak the language of programming and coding. And it's not that difficult. If you've got reading, writing, and arithmetic nailed down, you can do programming and coding. And that's the future. And we can actually, digital assets cross boundaries. Digital assets jump over regulations. That's the future for South Africa. Let's be the tech hub of Africa and one of the tech hubs for the world. And it's easily done. We just need to get governments out of the way.
Well, here's a good comment from Wendy Coleman. She says, I'm excited for our future. Bring back apprenticeships. And that speaks, I think, to what Pumi's saying here in terms of skill development. Chris Bennett referring to a social problem. Fatherless homes, unpopular truth, but there it is. I saw on that note, and I don't mean to make light of a very serious issue, I saw a very funny joke that someone sent me last night, which I think all of us will appreciate this morning. Woolworths chicken tastes as good as it does because both parents raised it. Don't know if you think that's as hilarious as I do, but that is pretty funny. And it is something that Chris is addressing here. Wendy also says, I like this guy. I think she means you, Rob. I love South Africa. It's my home, and I'm excited about our future. I'm loving this segment, says Sweet Pea. What about China's influence on our neighboring countries? The new road in Lesotho that's been built by China. Yeah, there are lots of these things that we need to talk about. Ongopotse says, yes for coding at high school level. I think that's important. We need to do that ASAP.
But the basic thing in terms of coding, guys, remember, is that we need to get maths right. And until because coding is fundamentally about mathematics, and mathematics is fundamentally about logic. And if you can't get that basic bit right, then we're not going to actually break the back of that issue. Interestingly enough, if you look at one of the places where Xi Jinping has been cracking down, it's been on the private education sector, which to my mind is an absolute disaster, because frankly, one of the best things that has been happening in terms of China is the fact that you had this burgeoning private education sector that was actually upskilling people at a dizzy rate. And because he's now taken the view, the communist view, that if people have to pay for access to education, it's a problem, then that's the reason why he's shut down this entire industry and wiped out billions in terms of the Chinese stock market as a result. Our private education sector in this country is one of the biggest things that we've got going for us. So if you look in terms of all of the companies that are playing in the private education space, and you talk about the
Advitex and those kinds,
and all of those guys, and now you have universities now being established for Afrikaans speakers that are actually awarding degrees. And they're actually taking advantage of the fact that there's a thirst for knowledge on the part of this younger generation. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to actually be encouraging. And the apprenticeships, Gareth, you might remember when we talked about the stuff that I was doing in the broadcast sector when I was still at E and then at YFM thereafter. When you embed training programs into the businesses that you run, and those training programs really have to be driven from the top, because the reason why those programs ended up being so successful is that if you have the buy-in of the CEO, then every department then adopts that as something that they need to be involved in. And suddenly you have this transfer of skills that happens at a dizzy rate. And I think that we actually need to look at a way of the training budget not just being something that becomes the prerogative of the HR department. CEOs need to take responsibility for that and say, we actually need to be training the next generation in terms of the stuff that we do in our business. And that's the point at which we're going to see things happen.
I don't think you're going to get any opposition to that last statement from Pumi or from Rob. I mean, you're both nodding along enthusiastically.
Rob, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I just worry a little bit at the education level about the sort of left-wing agenda, the CRT approach, the fact that, free market economics is not taught as well or as often as it should, and that people come out of university thinking socialism hasn't been tried properly. I mean, come on. Every
How many times do we have to learn this lesson?
I know. And then, you meet people who are being taught socialism hasn't been tried properly. Nonsense. It's been tried numerous times. It's a massive failure and it's a disaster. Don't even go near that. So our education has been a bit taken over by the leftists. And
I just want to say one other thing that you mentioned in your speech, which I thought was interesting, was the idea that we focused on the wrong subjects, and the universities, which are largely state subsidized. In fact, they're very heavily state subsidized in South Africa. That we still allow people to study nonsense and bullshit. That I can say this because I studied political science, and it was a waste of time. And it's stupid that any government should be involved in helping to educate people in something as useless as political science. We should be doing engineering, maths, the sciences more generally, business. These are the things we should be putting our money into. But it seems apprenticeships. Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Pums, you pick up the last word this morning, and then we'll shut down for today. What do you have to say?
My favorite thing about education is we like to talk about it at the end, at the tail end, but actually we have to start it at the bottom end. In South Africa, we have something like 60% of young people who start grade 1 don't finish. So by the time you're talking about what's being taught at university, 60% of those people aren't there. 60% of the population is not there. We've got to get it right at foundation phase. We've got to get the maths, the reading, the writing right at foundation phase. And one of the things that unfortunately we do very badly in this country is we don't teach in the mother tongue. We don't teach people the concepts of logic in maths in their mother tongue, in the language that they understand. So they have to grapple with language as well as concepts. Foundation phase, that's where we've got to get it right. Unfortunately, education is a long-term game. It's 15 years before you begin to see the results. But it's about how do we get all those young people that are currently in the streets, that are the devil's workshop, that can't get into the riots and into the looting. How do we get those young people in front of an opportunity that would reskill them, give them the kind of skill that they need to become economically viable today, or at least 6 months from now?
Well, I just want to pick up on something that Rob was saying just now in terms of the critical race theory and that kind of stuff. There's, I read, I get my news from a range of sources, Gareth. We've talked about this in the past. It's not mainstream media. I read a piece on, I think it was persuasion.org, written by a young woman who had just left high school, so I think she's around about 18 years old, and actually wrote a really thoughtful piece about a range of subjects. But the footnote said that she was going to be, she was not going to college, but she was actually going to be doing a year-long apprenticeship at with a company called Praxis. And I'd just like to urge everyone to take a look at this. And the website is called discoverpraxis.com. And it says, get matched with a full-time paid apprenticeship without the cost or hassle of college. No degree required. And it's a business model, and I've just started looking at it because I actually came across it in the past week. But the more I'm digging into this, the more I see this as a business model that we need to be adopting throughout the country, of actually injecting people into the economy. Cut the universities and the critical race theory out of the equation completely. Have skilling that takes place for specific purposes in the coding space, as Rob points out. In the entrepreneurial space, you're learning the basics of actually running a business, managing cash flow, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that that's where the future actually lies. And so discoverpraxis.com, I think I'd just like to point people in that direction.
Okay.
I'm hoping to see, to make use of this.
Well, lady and gentlemen, I think we're going to call this to order. Jesse says this hour went by very, very quickly, and that's exactly right. Pumi, thank you so much as always. Kanthan, thank you. Rob, I hope you don't get into any more trouble. Although I'm sure with company like Kanthan and Pumi, you're likely to be the most quiet and reasonable in this particular room. They are not afraid to speak their minds as you are. And I'm delighted that you were able to come and converse with us today, despite all of the pressures of what your last talk has created for you. It's great to have you on.
Thank you all. Great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week for another Burn.